Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Fintech Hunting podcast. We have a very special guest for you today. He's an industry thought leader, a digital and media expert. You guys know him. He doesn't need an introduction, but please help me welcome to the show, Diego Sanchez, president of HousingWire Media. Diego, welcome to the show.
Michael, what an honor and a pleasure, and I love the energy that we've got here. Let's go.
Let's go. So you've been moderating panels. You've got a lot going on. Give me a little bit of some of your observations of kind of where we're at in the market today.
You know, it has been an absolutely crazy week. So about 9 days ago, Trump had his Liberation Day tariff announcements, and the markets have basically gone haywire over the past week. And you've seen days where the equity markets are way down, and 10-year yields are also going up at the same time. You've seen days where the equities have gone way up and 10-year yields have gone down. It's just, I don't think anybody has been able to really follow this logically over the past week. And at times I feel like it's gotten a little bit scary out there, and you've started to see some investors and consumers get pretty fearful.
Right. Well, KP always talks about uncertainty is usually what creates the most problems. People are looking for some certainty, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of certainty with the tariffs, a strategy and approach. I know you had mentioned in a post recently that, you know, your observations are probably that rates are going to stay around 7%, and you think there's still going to be a lot of market volatility. What impact will that have then on the spring buying season?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And, you know, we were seeing so far up until Liberation Day, you know, we have a housing market analyst named Logan Mohtashami who tracks housing market data really closely, you know, industry data, but also some of HousingWire's proprietary data. And what he was seeing so far in 2025 was actually a pretty good spring housing market. You saw MBA purchase application index looking pretty good. You saw a pretty nice inventory build and a good number of new listings heading into this crucial spring home buying market. But I think as of 9 days ago, you know, all bets are off.
Right.
I think it's pretty likely from my perspective that we're going to derail that spring housing market a little bit with all of this volatility. I think it's very likely that home sellers will be somewhat afraid, and they might drop their prices or take their listings off the market. You've seen you know, some big companies pull their IPOs over the past week, sort of an indication of where investors and company heads are at. And then I think if you're just think about it from the perspective of a first-time home buyer or just a home buyer in general, if there's so much uncertainty out there, do you really want to be the one that catches that falling knife, right? Like maybe you just take a little bit of a break, a little bit of a breather in your home search, unless you absolutely have to move. And, you know, those people will continue to move like they always do. But if you can take a little bit of a break, I think you probably will.
Yeah, and I think to your point then, I think we're going to see some people sitting on the sidelines waiting until the dust settles, which obviously then is going to lower the origination volumes. You're going to start seeing some economists come out with predictions of lower origination volumes this year. You had mentioned data and HousingWire data services, and I know you and Clayton have been talking quite a bit about some of the new services that you are offering. Talk to me about that and explain to our listeners why that is so impactful for our industry.
Yeah, I think data is incredibly important. And you've really looked at HousingWire over the past year and a half or so. You know, we've been really pushing into data and data journalism. We acquired a company called Altos Research almost exactly 2 years ago. And what Altos gives us is really real-time housing market data for every zip code in the country. The reason I think that's really important is, as you and I both know, housing markets are not a national thing.
Right.
They are a regional thing, and even more importantly, they are a local thing. So what is happening in Brooklyn, New York, is very different from what is happening in Dallas, Texas, for example, where a lot of our HousingWire team members are based. Very different markets depending on where you live, even down to the zip code. And so I think, having access to that local housing market data and really insights is super important for the housing professional, whether you're on the real estate side or on the mortgage side. You need to be giving your customers advice based on your local market data. You need to be that local market expert. So I think it's absolutely crucial, especially when the markets go haywire like this, right? What we see in that local housing market data over the next couple of weeks is going to tell us the story of the spring housing market for the hundreds and hundreds of housing markets that there are across the country.
You bring up so many good points, and as I teach and coach originators across the country, it's difficult on some of the classes when somebody's inventory is really bad here, and then the other person's like, well, we don't have an inventory issue, we're perfectly fine. So to your point about that data and really getting it to the zip code level, I think is absolutely critical. And again, it shows HousingWire's leadership in the market of, it's not just about putting out a story. It's really embracing the industry and bringing the industry to life, whether that's through data, whether that's through video, whether that's through compelling articles, and onto a number of events. And we'll cover that in a second. I guess we can jump right into events.
Yeah.
You still have your beard. So for those of you who've been following you on LinkedIn, you and Clayton kind of made a bet. So talk to me about that. And then more importantly, let's talk about the gathering. I attended last year. It was one of my favorite events of the year because it's one of those intimate settings where you can truly sit down and network with decision makers. You find out what's going on in the industry. I love it for the fact that you don't have 50 breakout rooms, right?
Yeah, right.
Everyone's in that breakout. So talk to me about the gathering, and you can throw in a little bit of the story about the beard and everything else.
Yeah, it's really a beard challenge, I would say. So, Clayton and I are both pretty competitive people, and about 3 weeks ago in some Slack channel, some HousingWire Slack channel, he said, you know what, everybody, I'm not shaving my beard until we sell another 100 tickets. And I kind of poked and I'm like, 100 tickets? We're going to sell that in like a week and a half. And so you can guess where this went. We just kind of kept going back and forth. And so the challenge became, neither of us are going to shave our beard until we sold another 500 tickets.
Okay.
So we're probably not going to be shaving for another month or so because of that. And we both already have pretty full beards. So it's going to get pretty wild and mountain man-y in a little bit. But it's really fun. The gathering is a spectacular event. And I of course I'm biased because I'm the host of the event. But if you talk to any of the 700 plus executives that attended last year, I think you'll hear the same story. And I think the reason that, it's such a good event, there's a couple of things. One, we are really bringing the whole housing industry together. So, no longer is mortgage in its own silo and real estate in its own silo. Executives from both mortgage and real estate are coming together and collaborating and networking to solve these industry problems that aren't in any of those silos, right? Like These are housing industry problems that we've got to come together and solve. And so we do that at the gathering. And so last year we had over 700 industry executives. This June, it's June 8th through 11th in Colorado Springs at this really beautiful resort called the Broadmoor. We're planning to have over 1,000 housing industry executives. So we're growing pretty significantly over 2024. And the magic in this event is it is a half day of content and then a half day of networking activities and really just business development. And we do that for 3 days, right? So you get really great action-packed content in the morning, and no session is longer than 25, 30 minutes.
Yep.
That's our cap. So no one's going to bore you for 60 minutes from the stage. If somebody's boring, they'll be gone in 15 minutes. So don't worry. And we put a lot of work into making sure that none of our speakers are boring or just not bringing insights. It's really important that everybody brings insights. And we don't put paid speakers on the stage. We put your industry peers on the stage. We put CEOs of IMBs, of real estate brokerages, of mortgage brokerages. Those are the people that we put on stage so that they can share their insights on how they're building their business right now, despite the difficult housing market. So it's really just a wonderful event that brings together really the most powerful people in housing for 3 days of really good content and really good networking.
And you guys just made a big announcement today of another speaker that got added. Do you want to share that with the group?
Totally. And I'm really excited about this one. So Varun Krishna is the CEO of Rocket. As we all know, Rocket is making incredibly big industry defining moves in 2025 so far. They kicked it off with just an incredible integration into the Super Bowl. I won't even call it an ad because you had the ad, the Own the Dream ad, and then you go back to the stadium and you've got the whole stadium singing the song that was in the ad. It was really just an incredible integration. And I think pretty inspiring for the entire industry. So they've kicked it off with that big campaign and a rebranding for Rocket. And then they bought Redfin. And so they're now going to own a good chunk of discovery and kind of lead generation for the home buying process through Redfin. And then like a couple weeks later, they bought Mr. Cooper. And so now they're going to combine that with their amazing servicing business into a servicing behemoth. And one thing we know about Rocket is they are really good at recapture. So a lot of those loans that are being serviced either by Mr. Cooper or Rocket, they've got a pretty decent chance of recapturing those. And they're building tons of AI and other technology to do that. So all that to say that Varun Krishna has been very busy. And the interesting thing about him is, I had him on my Powerhouse podcast in the winter, and Clayton had him on stage last year at the gathering. And the guy gives you his playbook. Right. He tells you what's coming, right? It's not a mystery. I mean, he's not going to give you the names of the companies that he's acquiring, but he's telling you what he's building. So he told me, we are trying to build the Apple of homeownership, right? So when he says the Apple of homeownership, that kind of is an end-to-end business
ecosystem, yes.
Right. And so then he bought Redfin, and then he bought Mr. Cooper. And so he's building that ecosystem that he talked about as the Apple of homeownership on my podcast. So he'll give us that playbook again, and I think it'll be a really interesting session at the gathering.
Well, and he did a great job last year talking about AI and their plans for AI, and you saw that in the moves they've made the last couple of years with their C-suite. They brought in not just mortgage experts, they brought in technical experts who really know financial services and a lot more of the consumer-facing app perspective, and they're making waves. So, I think he's going to do a great job. I heard him last year, and I know he'll do a great job again from the stage this year.
It's really interesting. You were in that session last year. I think it kind of set the event abuzz with chatter about AI because he brought tangible real world examples of what they're doing at Rocket with AI. And it was really incredible. And actually, that's the reason that we started our one-day summits, and we started with the AI event.
Yes.
We saw the buzz from his conversation with Clayton, and everybody was talking about AI. And really, in general, 25% of the sessions at the gathering last year, AI came up in some way, right? People were talking about it, even though it wasn't necessarily on the agenda. And so we were like, okay, we gotta respond to this and bring out this AI summit.
And I think to your point, he was one of the first from the stage in the industry that actually gave tangible results. It wasn't theory anymore. Yeah. It wasn't like, this is what we think AI could do. It was like, here's the systems we've created. Here's the name of our AI engine. Here's what it's doing and the results we're getting. I mean, I was reading about Rocket last year, and I think one of the statistics in one of the articles was that they could scale another 200 billion and not have to add another employee because what they've done with their AI and their tech stack.
Michael, that's such an interesting point. And, that point has come up time and time again on my Powerhouse podcast. And I'm sure it's coming up on your podcast as well. It was so interesting. I had Jay Bray, the CEO and chairman of Mr. Cooper, on not long, that wasn't far apart from when I had Varun on.
Okay.
And they both mentioned that they were texting each other. And so at the time I was like, oh, that's cool. But I didn't really think about it, but they were probably texting about the deal that they were working on. But Jay also said, what you exactly just said. He's like, we're growing Mr. Cooper by, 20, 30% a year, and we're not adding a single team member. Right. And you listen to that and you're like, oh, wow, AI is really happening and it's enabling companies to grow revenue without growing costs.
Yeah. And I think for the companies that have not leaned into AI or are still waiting to see what happens,
don't wait.
I see that gap continuing to get wider and wider. And pretty soon it's going to be to a point where they're really not going to be able to catch up. Diego, you and I could talk for hours. I love this conversation. I want to make sure I also give you an opportunity. What's next at HousingWire?
Yeah. What's next is we're going to keep working on what we've been working on, which is infusing more and more data into HousingWire in every way that we possibly can. And so, whether it's infusing this great Altos housing market data that we've got, getting access to other data sets, either through M&A or through partnerships, infusing that into our work. People really want to know about mortgage rates. So we've built a mortgage rate center on HousingWire. We want to really make the housing professional local data enabled. And, it's just so important to me, especially when times are difficult and chaotic like they are right now. There are still going to be winners. There are still going to be LOs and branch managers and real estate agents and team leaders that are going to win no matter what. And the way that they're going to win, from my perspective, is they are going to be the local market expert for their clients. And they're going to know the housing market cold. They're going to know the mortgage products cold that are applicable to that particular customer situation. But data is just key to being that great local advisor that every home buyer wants.
I absolutely love it. If people have not signed up for the gathering yet, what do they need to do? Where do they need to go so that they can get a ticket and not miss out on being in the room?
Yeah, great question. So just go to housingwire.com and we've got a top navigation and you can see events. You can see a lot of things there. You can see, our news sections, our events, our videos, our podcasts. But go to events, go to the gathering, and definitely get your ticket, because what's been happening with HousingWire events really ever since the gathering last year is we are selling out. We are selling out several weeks before the event takes place. And I really hate for people to miss out. But we do have capacities that we have to deal with. And so, I want everybody to make it that wants to. So buy your ticket now. And the key with the gathering right now is, there's only a certain number of hotels, including the Broadmoor, that are going to be close to our event venue. And those are going to book. Those are going to book up. The Broadmoor itself, our room block at the Broadmoor is already sold out for the most part. So, go buy your ticket, book your hotel, come and join us. It's going to be amazing.
Diego, I can't thank you enough for joining me on this episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast.
Really my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.